Everybody, welcome aboard. Captain Mike here. Today we're going to take a look at the engine panel, the passenger oxygen panel, as well as the landing gear indicators on the aft overhead panel. Now, if you haven't opened up your aft overhead profile, go into Profile Creator and open up your aft overhead profile that you've created earlier. Now, a lot of the information you see here may not be on your in your profile, but we're going to add stuff as we go along. If you don't have one created at all, you're going to come in here and just make one up. You're going to select the board that you're using for your aft overhead, and then you're just going to give it a name. Once that's done, you're going to continue on where we are right now. So now we're looking for the indicator lights for the engine reverses for 1 and 2. So I'm going to open up my devices here, come down to the 3264 board, which is what controls my aft overhead, and if I go to output, I already know that my my numbers are 1 and 8, and if you take a look, you'll see that they're both illuminated now. So we can turn those off. Now we're going to go into Profile Creator, and we are looking for output here. And if your profile here is empty, you're just going to add and then go from there. So output 1 and 8 are the two annunciators that we're using. So we're going to open up 1. And there's nothing in modify and there's nothing in precondition. We're only going to be concerned with the output. And we're using the PMDG 737. The output type is LED. The outputs are going to be 1. The PMDG data is going to be engine underscore annunciator and then reverser, as you see here. Make sure it's typed out just the way you see it. And the PMDG index is going to be 0. And you're going to select OK. And then we're going to come down to number 8 because that was the second one that was being used. And we're going to add that one, or I'm going to edit. Again, there's nothing in modify, nothing in precondition. Come back to output, and we're going to make sure that the PMDG 737 is selected. The output type is LED. The output for me is number 8. For you, it may be a different number. It depends on how you have it set up. Okay, and then the PMDG data is going to be engine underscore annunciator reverser. Again, make sure that's typed out exactly the way it is here. And then the PMDG index is going to be 1. And we're going to select OK. And if we were to save that now and run MS 2020, those indicator lights would now show up. So with that done, we're going to move on to the EEC switches. So to set up our EEC switches, we're going to have to come back into our controller board. We're going to go to Input, and we're going to get the numbers for that. And that's 1 and 2. So let's get those put in now. Okay, let's add these switches. We're going to come into Profile Creator, go to Input, and if you'll see here, switch 1 and switch 2 are in twice because it has a guard and it has a switch. So we're going to add these 4 items into the mix. So the precondition is going to be blank. The input's going to be for the PMDG 737. The input type is switch. My input number is 1. Your number may vary. The event is shown here in green. Just type that out exactly the way you see it, including the underscores. And for me, it's going to be a data press 1 and a data release of 1. Next, we move on to the switch itself. Precondition is going to be blank. The input's going to be for the PMDG 737. The input type is switch. The input number for me again is 1. Your number may differ. The event is shown here in green. Type that out just the way you see it, including the underscores. The data press is going to be 1 and the data release is going to be 2. Now for the other side, for the right side, we're going to put in the guard. The precondition is blank. The input's going to be for the PMDG 737. The input type is switch. My input number now is 2. Your number may vary. The event is shown here in green. Just type that out exactly the way you see it, including the underscores. The data press is going to be 1 and the data release is going to be 1. And the last item we're going to put in is the switch. The precondition is going to be blank. The input's going to be for the PMDG737. The input type is switch. My input number is 2. Again, your number may vary. The event is shown here in green. Just type that out exactly the way you see it, including the underscores. And my data press now is going to be a 1, and the data release is going to be 0. Alright, so we're going to save this, and then we're going to move on to the enunciators next. Next, we have to find the indicator lights for the EEC switches. So let's go back into our controller board. Now, I already know mine are 2 through 7. So if we take a look as I select them, you'll see that they light up on my my panel. So we can shut those off now that we know what the numbers are. And we're going to come back into Profile Creator and Output, and we're looking for 2 through 7. And if we take a look at 2, under Modify, you see there's nothing. Under Precondition, there's nothing. So Output, we're looking for PMDG737. The output type is LED. The outputs is 2. And the PMDG data is the engine enunciator engine control. Make sure that this is typed out exactly the way you see here. And the PMDG index is 0. Next is 3. There's nothing in Modify, nothing in Precondition. Output PMDG737. The output type is LED. The outputs is 3. And the PMDG data is ENG EEC switch. And the PMDG index is 0. Next up we have 4. And again, nothing on the modified, nothing on the precondition. We're using the PMDG737. The output type is LED. The output is 4. And the PMDG data is engine underscore enunciator alternate. And the PMDG index is 0. 5. Nothing on the modified, nothing on the precondition. Output is PMDG737. The output type is LED. The outputs is 5 for me. Your number may differ. The PMDG data is engine underscore EEC switch, and the PMDG index is 1. 6. Nothing on the modified, nothing on the precondition. Output PMDG737. The output type is LED. The outputs is going to be 6 now. The PMDG data is engine underscore enunciator alternate, and the PMDG index is 1. And again, make sure that the PMDG data is spelled out just the way you see here. Up next we have 7, and we're going to open that. I'm editing it. You're going to add it. So there's nothing under modified, nothing under precondition. Back to output, and we're using the PMDG737. The output type is LED. The outputs is 7 for me. Your number may differ. And then the PMDG data. Make sure that this is spelled out exactly the way you see it here. And then the PMDG index is going to be 1. And we're going to select OK. And that takes care of the EEC switches as well as the indicator lights that are associated with them. So what you want to do now is we're going to save this, and we're going to run MS 2020 and take a look at those switches real quick. Now let's have a look at the EEC switches. As you can see, they're both showing on. I press it and it goes to alternate. Press it, it goes to alternate. Back to on, back to on. So that's working. All right, let's move on to the passenger oxygen switch and the indicator light. We continue with the passenger oxygen switch and indicator light. Now I'm going to add the indicator light first, because once I throw the switch, that light's going to come on and stay on until we get maintenance to take care of it. So we're going to go back into our controller board, take a look at output. Now I already know that my number is 43 or 42, but you're going to have to find the number that's associated with your oxygen indicator light. And as you can see, that's now on. So we're going to come back into Profile Creator. Inside the Aft Overhead, we're going to go to Output. We're looking for 42. And as you can see, this is set up for the oxygen annunciator, passenger oxygen on. So we're going to go in here. You're going to add this, although I'm going to edit. And as you can see, there's nothing under modified, nothing under precondition. And under output, it's PMDG 737. The output type is LED. The output for me is 42. Yours is going to be a different number, more than likely. The PMDG data is the oxygen underscore annunciator pass underscore oxygen underscore on. Make sure that this is typed out exactly the way you see it. PMDG index is left blank, and we're going to save that. Now that the annunciator light is set up, we're going to go ahead and set up the switch. So we're going to come back into the board, and we're going to go to Input. Now I know for me, the input for this is number 3. Let me just throw that switch. So that's associated with switch 3. So let's go back into our profile, and we're going to go to Input, and we're looking for Input 3, which is right here. And as you can see here, I have passenger guard as well as passenger switch, because there's a guard on the passenger oxygen switch on the aft overhead. So we're going to have to add both of these. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add the guard. So you're going to click Add, although I'm going to edit. And if we take a look at the precondition here, there isn't anything. So we go to Input, PMDG 737. The input type is switch. The input is 3, and the event is the the event underscore overhead underscore oxygen underscore passenger underscore guard. And again, make sure that this is typed out exactly the way you see it. The data press is going to be 1, and the data release is going to be 0. And for the passenger switch itself, you're going to add this. And again, precondition, there's nothing here. And the input is the PMDG 737. The input type is switch. The input is 3 again, same number. And the event is going to be the EVT underscore OH underscore OXY underscore pass underscore switch. And then under data press is going to be 1, and then under release is going to be 0. And then once this is set up, your switch is actually set up as well as the guard. So if we connect to MS 2020, I'm going to run this, and let me go throw that oxygen switch. So that takes care of the oxygen switch, the guard, as well as the indicator. And up next, we're going to take a look at the landing gear indicators on the aft overhead. We're going to add those. Alright, let's finish off this section by adding the indicator lights for the landing gear on the aft overhead. So again, we're going to come into our controller board for the aft overhead. Now I already know that my indicator lights are 21, 22, and 23. As you can see, they're lit. And we can turn them off now. So 21, 22, and 23, we're going to come back into Profile Creator. Going to go to Output, and we're looking for 21, 22, and 23. So as you can see, I'm already set up, but you're going to add these three items. So I'm going to click on Edit. You would add, and there's nothing under Modified, nothing under Precondition. I'm going to go to Output, select the PMDG 737. The output type is LED. The output for me is 21, and the PMDG data is going to be gear underscore annunciator overhead left, and then the PMDG index is blank. For 22, again, there's nothing in Modify, nothing in Precondition. It's the PMDG 737. The output type is LED. The output for me is number 22. It may be different for you. And the PMDG data is going to be gear underscore annunciator overhead right. And the PMDG index is left blank. And then the final indicator, which is number 23 for me, again, Modify is blank, Precondition is blank. Output PMDG 737, the output type is LED. The output is going to be 23. Again, your number may differ. And the PMDG data is gear underscore annunciator overhead, and that's for the nose gear. And the PMDG index is going to be left blank. So once these three are entered, you're going to save your work, right? Make sure you save your work. And then the next time that you run this profile, the indicator lights will pop up. Alright, we're going to move on over to the next section and finish up the overhead with the PSEU.